Okay, and now that we're all in, I'm gonna pass mic to Boyka, and we're gonna talk about handmade teas today and drink Taiping Hokui. This is the handmade tea that we have here. Hold on one second. One of the handmade teas, and you see the unusual leaves of this tea, and maybe Boyka will tell us a little bit about this tea. You see how long, unusually long these leaves are. So yeah, I'm gonna brew this tea and we're gonna talk about handmade teas in general.
Do you always do grandpa style?
Not always, but with this tea in particular, I do because it's so easy and it looks much better in a tall glass.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, you have to break the leaves. And I just came up with another solution how to brew it Gonfu style without breaking them. You just basically brew them in a chahai, like you brew in a chahai, you pour from one chahai to another. But it's just so much easier to brew it this way. And
Yeah.
in China, it's most people drink green tea grandpa style. This is like the traditional way.
Okay, cool.
Misha, can you put in the chat what that tea is called again?
Yeah, sure. We'll do 1 second.
Yeah, so we are starting with a very fine type of Chinese green tea, the Taiping Hokui. It's a very interesting tea, and as Misha said, there is also a specific way of brewing it without breaking the leaves. In this case, Misha can use chahai, but in fact, you can use a tall glass, a tall transparent glass, which like any kind of tall transparent glass, which is heat proof so that it doesn't break under the hot water. It is also a very popular way of brewing green teas, and especially in the case of Taiping Hokui, as you can see, it has a pretty large, it uses pretty large and pretty long leaf material. So Taiping Hokui, it's actually one of the signature Chinese green teas. It comes from the Anhui province in China. Which is a place with a very long and rich tea history. So maybe you have noticed yourself, it has a very peculiar look due to the extensively long tea leaves that it uses. So it normally adheres to a very strict picking standard, and which consists in a bud and 2 leaves that should be between anywhere between like 5 to 9 centimeters long. So this is the material that is used for Taiping Hokui. So there is actually an interesting legend about this tea. The name literally translates as the Monkey King from Taiping, and the legend talks about a monkey king that lost its kid and went on in search of the baby monkey. However, it never came back, and later its body was discovered by a monk who decided to give a proper burial of this devoted monkey parent. So at the place where where the Monkey King was buried, a beautiful tree grew on the next year, and the monk in question harvested the leaves, and this is how the first Taiping Hokui tea came to be.
I heard another story, a little bit sad, less sad than this one.
All right.
Yes, that
please do share it.
tea bushes they grow on cliffs, and so the farmers they train monkeys, to pick the leaves from these bushes, and then they name the tea after that, Monkey King. But I heard this story about Taiping Hokui. I also heard this story about monkey pig tea guanine. So it's like a generic story for all the teas that use the word monkey in its name. So
Picked teas, because I just assumed that was apocryphal all across the board.
yeah.
Yeah, so the peculiar size and shape of this tea, besides from the tea leaves and the tea picking standard that is being used, is also due to a specific kind of shaping. So usually the leaves for taiping hopei are all shaped by hand, and this is done employing a specific way of kind of pinching and rolling the leaves. In Chinese it is called nie jian, where nie is holding something between the first 2 or 3 fingers and rolling it, and jian is used to either indicate a tip, so it's being pinched and rolled so that it forms like a straight line with with sharp peaks on both sides. So this kind of gentle approach, so there is no kneading of the tea leaves, there is no pressing, but only a delicate rolling with the tips of the fingers. So this kind of approach also helps in preserving the delicate aroma and shaping the delicate taste of taiping hopei. So as mentioned, this tea is being hand processed, and today we'll be discussing about the difference and some similarities, of course, between handmade teas and all the other types of teas. So in my experience, when I have people tasting handmade teas, which means fully handmade teas, they come to me mostly with 2 types of questions. So the first one usually focuses on the price. Not only for green teas, of course, but for every kind of tea, every kind of the 6 big tea types, there are teas in all price segments. So usually, of course, the handmade teas are literally above the rest, not only in terms of quality, but also in terms of pricing. And we will be discussing this aspect too. So first thing, one of the things people most often reach out for and are curious about is related to the price of the handmade teas, which is well different than the other kind of teas. And the second thing is related to quality. So they would usually come sometimes even with being so impressed that I get feedback like, oh my God, I never knew that green tea actually could taste this way, or it feels like it's the first time I'm actually experiencing oolong tea, for example. So while these are like the 2 types of most frequently shared feedback or questions being asked in this respect, of course, there are also other things to consider for fully handmade tea. So let's start first by defining the 3 types of teas from a processing point of view. So we are speaking about, starting from the lowest level, first of all, we're speaking about machine processed teas. Then we have a level up, the semi-handmade teas or partially handmade teas. And then we go at the top of the ladder with fully handmade teas. So let's start from the bottom to the top. So machine processed and machine produced teas. Well, of course, this is self-explanatory, and it refers to those teas where the whole processing, the whole process is either fully automated or is done with very little human intervention, predominantly by machines. So starting from the very harvesting itself, and then continuing through the sorting, the fixation, the fixing, the roasting, the shaping of the tea leaves, all those steps in the production process are actually being done with the extensive help or solely by machines. So apparently, this also has its advantages. This kind of production and this kind of processing means that we can process very large quantities of tea all at once. So for mass production, apparently tea market is very large. And there is big and ever-growing demand on tea. So in order to be able to do a mass production, apparently we have to rely on machines. There is also a consistency that can be achieved by machines because usually machine-made teas adhere to strict recipes with strictly controlled ratios under strictly controlled conditions. So there is a consistency in the flavor and the taste profile that we get each time when we turn to a machine-made tea. So while this can be an excellent option for satisfying the big market demand or for just for your normal ordinary daily cup of tea, while this can be a very efficient production and processing method, there is also a downside to it, and it is that this kind of tea can lack the nuances, let's say, the richness of the flavors and the aroma. It can lack some kind of uniqueness that is so characteristic of the fully handmade, the fully hand-processed kind of tea. So going on to the next type of tea, which is the semi-handmade or the partially handmade tea. So here we refer to some kind of golden middle. So we have a type of tea that is lies between the fully handmade one and the fully machine-made one. So usually when we're talking about a semi-handmade tea, we talk about a tea that is being produced and processed with a combination of hand method, using methods by hand, and by machine. So this is very characteristic, by the way, for teas with long and extensive production and processing methods. So oolong, for example, is one such type of tea. As this is the tea with probably the most complicated production and processing method, some of the stages in the production and the processing are being helped, so to say, by using certain machines. So usually machines are being employed or used through those kinds of production and processing steps that require both extensive labor and time. So for example, the so-called making the green, or 做青, as this is referred to in China. So this is the step in the processing where the leaves are being continuously tossed and turned in circular motion on some flat pans, and this is being altered with leaving them to rest. So this production stage, for this production stage, sometimes machines are being employed. Also for the rolling, where the leaves are being rolled or knead or shaped in this step in the production, also sometimes is being delegated to certain machines. So what is the result of this? Well, first of all, it also helps farmers process relatively large quantities, tea leaf quantities at once. And this is important unless, of course, we cater to a very, very limited audience. In most cases, of course, where demand outgrows, the supply, we need to be able to process relatively large quantities of tea leaves. So machines are being helpful in this respect. However, as machines are being employed only as an auxiliary tool, so they are not doing the main job, they are just assistants. So these kinds of teas that we can still count on having this artisanal touch in these teas in terms of flavor, aroma, profile, and overall character that makes them stand out among other, mass-produced or fully machine-made teas. So the last step and the last type from a production and processing point of view, which is at the top of the ladder we are speaking about today, is or are the fully handmade teas. And well, the fully handmade teas, they're not just a product, but they are rather an experience in themselves, because actually the fully handmade teas usually imply they are like the living and breathing experience of centuries or even millennium long tradition of a certain kind and certain techniques of tea making. So there are teas in China for which the production and the processing techniques have been declared an intangible cultural heritage. So when we are speaking about fully handmade teas, the techniques and the craft that is being used in this case is not, we're not just talking, that's why we're not just talking about a product, we're talking about a cultural experience, we're talking about a national heritage. This, of course, makes those teas stand out, but this is not the only reason. So they have, of course, not just an economic value, they don't have just a market value, but they rather have also a cultural value. So overall, the entire processing, so from hand picking through all the stages up until the final product, we are only talking about production processing by hand. So, well, they are, of course, a kind of a boutique product, which is very sought after, specifically for their uniqueness, for their special character, for their richness, and for their outstanding efficient, like let's say, like, first of all, character, flavor, taste, and aroma profile. So I am not going to list all the production and processing step that the tea leaves go through. Essentially, every kind of production and processing step that we have mentioned in the respect of machine making for semi-handmade teas here are being done only by hand. So maybe we should just mention one step in the production and processing of those teas, and this would be the shutting or the fixing step. So this is the step where usually the oxidation is being halted, and usually this is the pan frying of the tea leaves, because in most cases this is done by pan frying. There are other ways, for example, like baking for sun drying, but we're not gonna get into such details. So we are essentially talking about the halting of oxidation or fixing of the leaves. And why is it so important? Because when this is done by hand, first of all, this is a crucial step in defining the tea character. The end quality, the quality of the end product and the shape and the character of the end product depends very much from this single processing stage. So when this is done by hand, first of all, it is very important. This is when actually the skills of the master shine through, because sometimes it literally takes seconds to ruin an entire batch of tea, because essentially burn it for just holding it a couple of seconds more on the hot surface of the pan where the tea is being fried. Second of all, every tea master has their own kind of technique, their own kind of touch to process the tea leaves, and it leaves a mark in the tea's overall character, in the tea taste and the profile taste. Of course, there are, some very advanced tea lovers and experts that are able, for certain types of teas being processed by certain masters, they are able to, grasp the personal touch that the master has left on the tea leaves being prepared by him. While this is not really, necessary for the average tea lover that is just enjoying a fully handmade tea, it is true that this is where the tea is being mostly shaped. So this is a very important step, and it really makes a difference for a tea if it has been hand processed or machine processed during this crucial phase of the fixing. So first of all, we have the impact on the tea profile in terms of aroma and taste when as to whether the tea has been handmade, like hand processed during the fixing or machine processed. Then we also have another very crucial factor which directly, so this directly influences the tea taste and aroma. The second factor which directly influences the tea price is the overall amount that can be processed when the tea is handmade versus machine made. So when masters process tea leaves, they do it in very small batches, because this is, it takes a man can only process a certain quantity of tea leaves without having them burned or just not being able to control all the tea leaves at the same time. So usually this is done in very limited batches. It might be something like 100 or 200 grams of raw tea leaves at once being processed at once. So having in mind that the processing can take anywhere between like a quarter of hour up to an hour or more per batch, you can say that a working day has a very limited and fixed amount of working hours in which the tea master can only process this limited amount of tea leaves. So in summary, this means a very limited supply of handmade teas overall that is being possible at all. And given that, for a highest grade, there is only a spring harvest for any tea, which is also limited in time, then you can imagine how we have further and further limitations on the amount overall that can be produced by for any kind of tea, of handmade tea at all. So again, we're talking about the master skills that influence the fully handmade tea taste and aroma profile, and then we have the very limited quantity, which in turn directly impacts the fully handmade tea's price. So this is in general like a short representation for every kind of tea from a production and processing point of view, and strictly speaking about the differences that fully handmade tea makes compared to other kinds of processing for tea leaves. So when we're having a handmade tea, we are really actually we're experiencing not only a kind of tradition, a kind of cultural heritage, we are also experiencing the result of a very time sensitive and labor intensive and consuming kind of process, which of course has its price and also has its real uniqueness of character, which is something that is not being experienced every day with any kind of tea. Sorry.
I just wanted to make a point that normally, like a tea master would not bother with a mediocre, tea to begin with to make it handmade. So the teas that are being handmade, are picked. These are the best quality teas to begin with. In terms of the material that is used for it. So when you see that tea is like fully handmade, it means that they use, the best terroir, the best picking time, and all of these factors are usually in play. So nobody would bother making like a mediocre material into handmade product.
Absolutely, yes. Well, as we said, since there are lots of limitations on the handmade teas, both from it is very time sensitive and it is very quantity sensitive. So yes, it is definitely a practice for tea producers and for tea masters to reserve the very best of the tea harvest, namely for the hand processed teas.
And do you guys have any experience personally with handmade teas that you can compare to other teas that you have drunk, and anything to comment on it?
I've got a lot of teas with a lot of information telling me what elevation, where it came from, what part of the year, what family, in the case of verdant teas. But I've never seen specifically any labeling about whether the tea was fully handmade or not. So I don't know.
Yeah, I would say that like 90, I don't know, 95, I don't know the actual number, but the majority of teas that we drink, for Gonfucha, they're usually semi-handmade.
Yeah.
It means that usually picking is usually manual. Very rarely it's a machine picking, because otherwise you wouldn't get like good quality leaves. But the processing is usually made, with use of machines to one extent or another. But some teas are handmade, and it's usually, once again, not a big percentage, because there is only that many teas that can be produced, and the demand for it due to the higher price is also not as high. So people usually consider how much money they're willing to spend for a tea. So it's a tiny niche for those who really appreciate those kind of teas.
And with the weather in China decreasing the yield this year, I know that's caused a steep price increase.
Yes, of course. What happened this year in China in green teas, and it's like coming from my experience personally, that the output was much lower than usual, so the price went up. But those teas that actually tea masters were able to produce, this year they're extra sweet, because a lot of moisture. Those who don't know what happened there, basically there was a drought this year, and lots of crops just died out, didn't make it. But those teas that made it, they're extra sweet, because excessive moisture is not good for tea leaves. So those teas that were actually like survived those like hard fighters, for their lives, they came out really good, and enjoying some really good green tea this year. And I don't know, Boyka, do you know if there was a drought in Taiwan as well? I'm not sure.
I haven't heard any bad news from Taiwan, but to think about it, I haven't heard some good news either in respect of the weather. So yeah,
sometimes no news is good news.
It's a good news indeed. But maybe we have to ask we have to ask a specific question on the weather this year. I just wanted to add a point on the handmade teas labeling. So given all the factors that we have been mentioning about, including the cultural, the intangible cultural heritage, so having a fully handmade tea is a very strong and impactful marketing advantage. So my guess is that if a tea is being fully handmade, the producer will never miss to make a point about it and list it on the label. So I guess if you are having a fully handmade tea, the producer will make sure you know it. And if it's not, marked, then probably the tea is semi-handmade or any other kind of processing other than the fully handmade teas.
And I just put in the chat list of handmade teas that we have in our shop. So yeah, if you click on the link, you can find those teas, and the majority of them coming from our good friend Yun Yao. It's Boyka's personal connection from China. He's a young tea master that we really appreciate his skills and his teas.
Yeah, we're lucky to be able to offer these boutique kind of teas, because that is what they essentially are. And I would also be curious to have everyone's feedback for those who have tried, because those are, essentially in the green tea and yellow tea category. I would be curious to have everyone's feedback on how do you compare a fully handmade tea, for those who have tried it, to other type of tea processing.
Boyka, what is your personal experience with handmade teas? Like your first introduction for handmade teas, or your first impression of them?
Well, of course, it is so individual, because it also boils down to what kind of tea someone likes. Because okay, let's face it. Today, I have had a tea meeting earlier today with some tea enthusiasts, and we have had very fine kind of among all teas that we've tried. We've had also a fully handmade tea from Ningbo, from the Ningbo area. It was a green tea, because this is a predominantly green tea producing area. So the tea was excellent, in my opinion. However, there was one of the guys attending. Well, let's put it this way: he simply is not into green tea. So he is very much into oolong. He loves Hongcha, but green tea isn't his thing. So as good as the tea was, and as a nice profile that it had, and because it was very different, so dramatically different from other types of green tea that we have tried in the same meeting, he just couldn't feel this kind of difference, because it was simply not a tea into his liking. So whenever you are experiencing a fully handmade tea, maybe you can just try for it to be within the tea range that you personally like, in order to be able to fully appreciate the way it stands out, compared to other tea types. So for me, yeah, you wanted to ask something, Misha?
No, I just had the completely opposite experience. That yesterday, one of our tea friends wrote to us in a Instagram chat saying that he tried our Ganlu, Minging Ganlu tea from Liu Bao, and he said that this is the first green tea he ever enjoyed.
Actually enjoys. Oh, that's so nice to hear. Yeah.
That he heard so much about it, he decided to give it a try, and he was very skeptical. And this is the first tea he actually enjoyed, because it has this sweet profile, and very rounded, and lots of people associate green tea with bitterness and like excessive sharpness. And when it comes to handmade teas, it's usually very balanced, like very balanced taste.
This is the great feedback for me, because first of all, it shows there are there are people with different kind of attitude when we're talking about tea. So there are those people that they firmly know what they like and what they don't like, and they stick to it. So they have this pattern. Okay, so I like this, so I feel comfortable within this range, of taste and aroma, and I stick to it. So they know what they want, and they are looking specifically for it, and they're not interested, in any other kind of experience that they might have. And there are other people who are open, to experiencing, just kind of jumping over their usual comfort zone, you know, and they're ready to expand their kind of experience. It's not that one is a good kind of attitude, the other is a bad kind of attitude. It is just a matter of different attitudes towards new kind of experience. So apparently, we've had someone who is open to expanding their horizon, or is quite simply enjoying different kinds of tea taste and aroma profiles.
You know what? I just realized that I had all kind of handmade teas, green teas, yellow teas, red teas, heicha, but I never had handmade oolong. Never even like came across of handmade oolong.
You mean fully handmade oolong? Yeah.
Yeah, fully handmade oolong.
Right.
Have you ever encountered such, or is it like too laborious to be handmade
Yeah,
nowadays?
actually, it is not by chance that I mentioned oolong as an example for semi-handmade teas. It is quite simply because oolong really has like a long and laborious and complicated production cycle. And as long as we're talking for, it's not really a mass-produced oolong, but it's an oolong that is being, you know, produced for a relatively large clients base, you know. So if you have to search for a fully handmade oolong, then this would be like a very special batch, usually produced by some very renowned master himself. And the price tag can really get unbearable for specifically for this kind of tea. It's the same, by the way, with fully handmade longzing, where you usually add at least 2 zeros behind the price for a fully handmade one, especially if you are using a certain cultivar, like the traditional Chintijong cultivar for longzing. So then the price jumps like 100 times more. I guess that this is, well, the price that you have to pay sometimes.
What is the most expensive tea you ever drank, like you personally?
Well, I have had a 90 years old pour that has been introduced to me at once when I was in Shenzhen, and I was in the company of some renowned tea experts. So we have been tasting the personal reserves of one of the masters, and I remember that he mentioned that this tea has been acquired on an auction, and I felt uncomfortable, you know, to ask the question for the price at that moment. But usually these kinds of auction can go to hundreds of thousands of yuan for a single, you know, tea cake. So I guess that this was the most expensive tea that I have ever drank by then.
Was it the best tea you'd ever?
I don't consider myself such an expert as to, you know, being able to fully appreciate a 90 years old pour. Apparently its cultural value probably far exceeds its market value. It was an exceptional tea, yes. And well, judging, because it happened relatively early when I started, you know, getting into tea. So apparently at that time I wasn't even able, you know, to appreciate even half of what this tea could offer me at this stage, maybe. But now, judging, you know, from that point of view, yes, it was probably one of the most remarkable teas that I have experienced. Of course, the atmosphere, you know, the suggestion as to what you are tasting, really, it also adds up, you know, to the way you judge a certain tea.
But did you feel the change in your like body state, mind state, you know, and like, you know, did you feel the chi like of
yeah,
that tea?
well, I am not such an expert as to my chi, so, you know, I don't have it trained in the morning and in the evening usually, as some people do, yeah, in China. So I cannot say. Plus, we really had a small amount, so we only had like a couple of sips for everyone who was attending, and then continued on with some other type of teas. So while I really felt great, well, I'm not sure if I opened all my chakras right at this meeting.
What about you guys? What was the most remarkable tea you ever had?
You know, I mean, recently I am drinking right now the Dragon Well from you guys. This is good,
Mhm.
but the one that I really liked, and I don't know the most remarkable, it's more of like in the moment, it's like, wow. There it's that small snail green. I really like green teas. And I made it in a gaiwan. Before I'd made it in a small tea kettle or teapot. And when I made it in the gaiwan, it was just absolutely amazing. It was just like I really could taste the sweetness, the this and the that. It was really, really good. But I mean, I just have moments of enjoying tea, so I don't have anything that like, yes. But I'm going to try this one, the one that you're featuring,
Yeah,
and
it's
I'm going to really try it. And I was just looking in my tea book, and it has the highest concentration of antioxidants of all the teas that are featured in this tea book here.
mm.
Yeah, so it's the highest antioxidant for this monkey king tea, which
We are talking about the highest concentration of antioxidants among all green teas.
of all green teas.
Right.
Yep. It's the top of the list, and it's like it's not as high as like Japanese green tea.
I think matcha has
Yeah,
the
matcha's
highest,
higher. Actually, it's not
most
the
concentrated. Yeah.
yeah, it's not the highest. I didn't look at the previous page, but it's
Mhm.
high up there. It is high up there. Yeah, Longjin is actually a little higher than the monkey.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Hannah, what is your best, like most remarkable tea experience?
I
And
think
Trent, you can type yours into the chat.
oh no,
Since-
I will type so many errors that
Yeah.
you will not understand
No,
anything.
no, for Trent because he doesn't have sound, but you can talk to us directly.
Oh, I guess the most influential tea I ever had was my first Oriental Beauty tea from Floating Leaves. It's in Seattle, and that experience got me hooked. And I'm always looking to try to match that experience again with that particular kind of Bai Hao oolong.
It's very interesting because Oriental Beauty is now it's a very well marketed tea, but the thing is with many other like marketed teas that as the marketing went up, the quality declined quite significantly.
Yeah.
And nowadays it's pretty hard to find good quality Oriental Beauty. And we had it for a short period of time and then it disappeared and we've been looking for good quality Oriental Beauty since then and can't find anything that's really has this character, very like
Yeah,
velvety taste.
the first one I had that was so remarkable, I don't remember the vendor, and maybe my impression was just so strong because I had such a wonderful beginner's mind and was so willing to be flabbergasted. I've gotten two Oriental Beauties this year, and the quality is definitely not the same.
I've seen that there is like this Facebook group Gonfucha and people talk about different teas and there is this one Vietnamese guy that apparently offers really good Oriental Beauty, but I didn't get in touch with him yet to try his tea.
But you let me know if
But
you
I'm
stumble upon
curious.
his.
Yeah, for sure. And Trent says that he really likes our puer from Vietnam. Oh, yeah, our Vietnamese puer and our handmade yellow tea and matcha. Yes, Trent is a big fan of matcha.
I didn't know that you could make puer outside of.
Right. So technically, puer is is like champagne or cognac. It's area like a certain area has the right to the word, but this type of tea can be made anywhere. It just cannot be called puer, but everybody calls it this anyway. But technically, if this puer comes from Vietnam, in case if it's a raw puer, as the one that we offer, you can just call it shan. you know, but you cannot call it pu'er. But I spoke to producers, and they all say, we don't give a damn, you know, we're gonna call it pu'er anyway, and so they do, because this is the name it goes by, and nobody familiar with, I mean, not nobody, but most people are not familiar with other names. So unfortunately, if you want to sell your tea, you gotta call it pu'er. Otherwise, nobody will notice it. So,
Well, I'm happy for the common
Yeah.
identifier because I
Yeah.
need it.
Technically, it's pretty much the same area anyway, because these countries, they're neighboring countries, and it's kind of like a square or triangle, and it's more or less, you know, similar terroir. So there is not much difference in that terms. So
Do you have a shu or a sheng that you
we
offer?
have a shen, and we're gonna have shu, but a little bit later. We found a good shu as well. But we have a shen that is really, really like outstanding in terms of it's different from other shens that we tried. It has a very like rounded taste, like a mellow rounded taste, and the finish is like really remarkable.
Nice.
So we're trying to keep like every tea that we present, we're trying to make it like different from others. So I'm very happy personally that I found this Vietnamese tea.
What about Liu Bao? I've fallen in love with just all kinds of different Liu Baos. I didn't realize that I would like it even more than
I think we just spoke about it, right? You asked us this question before. Yeah, what about Liu Bao? Like, yeah, go ahead. I interrupted you. Hannah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, you didn't finish
No,
your question.
I just love it. I haven't had it. I've got a nice collection of aged Liu Baos now from not that old, but from 2007 up to last year, and each one has just got that. The leaf quality, you know, varies. Certainly, there's a lot of just kind of shake, but the best ones, the leaves they seem like they're almost entire, and they've got that wonderful. It smells like a summer rain, you know, on asphalt. There's just something kind of fabulous about it that I like even more than a shoe pour. Anyway, that's all I've got on that.
I think there is like Liu Bao also varies greatly in terms of how it's produced. I think Boyka can tell us a little bit more about it.
I'd love to hear.
Yeah, it's a remarkable tea. By the way, I really love and enjoy Liu Bao. Well, maybe I just need the weather to become a little more cool, as it's scorching hot right now here where I am. And it's usually a tea that heats me up from the inside. So, but yes, Liu Bao.
By the way, about that, let me interrupt you for a second. I'm sorry, Boyka.
Yeah.
Is it considered that this Liu Bao is both like heating and cooling, that, you know, it can get the excessive
heat out of the body? I have heard this too. Well, I cannot confirm for sure. I mean, to really confirm this, you need to be an expert in TCM, you know, in traditional Chinese medicine. I have heard this. I don't know if it is true, but you know, in Chinese tradition, usually Kei Cha, especially Liu Bao, is being drunk in especially humid and cool climates. So for me personally, I always feel the heating effect of the Liu Bao, but I cannot drink it as a cooling tea. I just don't have this experience with Liu Bao as a cooling tea. It never cools me. So again, this might be a bit of a personal experience, or you need to find a certified TCM, you know, practitioner or at least expert to confirm on the cooling part. For me, it doesn't work out definitely. As for the production, yes, there are ways. It's not really that it's a different kind of processing. So the processing is more or less the same, but there are some stages that are being additionally added to the processing or removed according to the type of processing that Liu Bao has. And yes, they do impact the overall taste and aroma profile of the Liu Bao cha. So, well, there is this type of processing that kind of it more let's say it more puts it on the greener side, so it will be closer to a shampoo, let's say. So it will be a very much alive, a very stimulating kind of tea, to the extent that it also might irritate a more gentle stomach, because essentially, yeah, the processing doesn't let too much of the tea oxidize, and doesn't let too much of the tea ferment. So lots of the active substances, lots of the antioxidant, group of compounds remains active. So this gives this tea a very intensive taste and flavor. It can also increase the astringency and the bitterness in this kind of Liu Baos. While the other type of processing that relies on a heavier fermentation and a higher degree of oxidation produces much more rounded and much more mellow kind of Liu Bao, which is much more closer to a shupur, let's say. So it has a much more gentle effect when being drank. It doesn't stimulate, it doesn't irritate so much, the stomach and the internal mucus. So it is a more gentle kind of tea. And of course, this impacts the taste, as you don't have this kind of, harshness, let's say. So it is more rounded, more mellow, and it has this sweetness inside, which we know from the heavily fermented kinds of Richa.
Caitlin, what is your most remarkable tea that left an impression?
There's nothing really that stands out to me as much as I enjoy tea. Like, I wouldn't say there's been anything that remarkable. So I'm still trying to find that experience.
So it's all ahead of you still.
Yeah.
The best tea is the one you haven't had yet.
Caitlin, let me send you some Oriental Beauty to try.
Question about going to a tea house and having like someone that's really skilled. What's your experience with that? And I know, Hannah, you had mentioned Seattle. Was that, part of just the joy of having that tea, and whoever made it, and vessels that they brewed it in, and the environment and the incense and this and that?
For me, I haven't had tea in a tea house.
Oh, okay.
I wish, because the owner of Floating Leaves, Shai Wen, I think is a charming person. I love watching her videos, but I've never been to a tea house. So I have to create those experiences myself with specially procured and specially beloved tea wares that I own.
So is this the person in New York, the Floating?
No, they're in Floating Leaves is in Seattle.
They're in Seattle, okay.
Yeah.
There's another floating place.
Yeah, so I haven't had tea. I'm in Louisville, Kentucky. There's not a lot of opportunities for me to have good tea. I'm trying to develop a community here where I am, so that I can invite people into my home just to, share Gong Fu Cha with people. But I probably have to go to New York, I guess, if not farther, to have that experience.
Yeah. Kelly, you're talking about Floating Mountain. You thought about
Floating Mountain.
Yeah, it's in New York. And it's actually originally, it's my friends who opened it, but then they were partners, and they split with a person who's now owning it. So but yeah, I've been there a few times. They have really good teas. I really enjoyed it. It's a lovely place, and I love the interior. Actually, interior was designed by my friends.
Oh, okay.
One of them is a designer, is an interior designer. And yeah, it's a lovely place to go to.
Nice.
They offer, they can brew tea for you, or you can brew it yourself. Have you been there?
I have not. That's
No, you have not. Yeah, I really recommend it. Yeah, a really good place.
Where are you, Kelly?
I'm in Philadelphia. Yeah.
Are there any tea houses in Philadelphia that?
I haven't found any, there may be one or two, but I haven't gone to any. I haven't found any, which is odd to me. A city like Philadelphia wouldn't have.
I know, should have a place or two, right? It's
Yeah.
big enough, and
Yeah,
we
they-
have plenty of, you know, clients from Philly. So I'm sure, you know, there will be enough people to, you know, to fill out the place.
Right. Yeah.
Boyka, what's the situation with tea houses in Bulgaria and Sofia? in
Oh, well,
particular?
thanks for asking. Actually, well, Sofia is a very small market in terms of Chinese tea. Like I'm talking about the real authentic Chinese tea. There are a couple of, you know, shops that are selling, Chinese shops, by the way, that are selling some kind of tea. But, well, unfortunately, this tea is a very low grade. One that I would never personally recommend. So there are no real tea houses here. I mean, there are no tea houses in the Chinese context of this word. There are a couple of tea houses that offer some kinds of tisanes, you know, along with some mostly Indian-based snacks to go with. But there is no real tea house in the strict Chinese name or sense of this word. By the way, I am just, you know, I mentioned I had a tea meeting today, earlier today, and we are working on this with the local Chinese Cultural Center. So this is one of the official cultural faces of China everywhere abroad. So you usually have the Confucius Institute, which is one of the, you know, state certified cultural institutions, and the a range, you know, of Chinese cultural centers in whatever city you name is the other, you know, state certified cultural institution that China usually has abroad. So we're working with the Chinese Cultural Center here in Sofia on establishing the first, it's not really a tea house, but it will be at least an experience, a point, a place where you are able to sit down and experience a true, authentic, high-grade, high-quality Chinese tea, which will be open to the general public and will have a proper, you know, Chinese-themed setting and Chinese-themed interior, where you will be able to actually soak into the normal atmosphere of usual atmosphere of a Chinese tea house. So
neat.
today was
Good.
actually one of the best meetings there, and I am happy that this project is advancing too.
That's great.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I'm surprised that you guys don't have like a tea house in Sofia in Bulgaria, because like from my experience, I'm from Ukraine originally, and I keep in touch with friends in Ukraine, and I know people like in Russia and Czech Republic, and my impression that in Eastern Europe, Chinese tea culture grew really big from the 90s, you know, and nowadays. And in my hometown, I'm originally from Odessa, which is not such a big city. It's only like the population is around like 1 million, maybe a little bit more. But we have at least, from what just the places that I know, haven't been there for 17 years. We have at least like 3 or 4 tea houses in Odessa, and they all
Well,
you
yeah.
know, prospering.
That sounds great, and to think of it, Odessa is right across the Black Sea. So we have Odessa on one coast of the Black Sea, and on the other we have Varna, which is our, you know, national port in Bulgaria. Well, other than Russia, excuse me. Other than, you know, this part of, you know, your land that has had, you know, traditionally strong ties with trading with Chinese tea, and it has this tradition of using Chinese tea. Other than that, I really cannot say what's the reason of, you know, Bulgaria and specifically Sofia not having tea houses yet. But it's true that Eastern cultures and even, you know, Eastern European cultures have had a strong interest in Chinese tea culture for quite some time now. The only explanation that comes to me is that, well, I mean, other than Sofia being a small market, not a small city, but a really small market for Chinese tea, I cannot really think of any other reason, and hopefully this is going to change soon. I see that we have been, I mean, it is my third year working on organizing and building some community around this, theme of the Chinese tea culture here in Bulgaria and in Sofia. I'm glad to see that this is coming. It's gaining some momentum now. It's advancing, so hopefully this is going to change soon.
Boyka recently was on national television presenting, giving a presentation about Chinese teas, talking on some morning show about teas. So hopefully, that will help to make people more familiar with it. To get
this idea some more recognition. And by the way, we've had another national TV interview, like literally the other day. So I'm gonna send you the links.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing it. And Bulgarian language and Ukrainian language and Russian language, they have a lot of similarities. So I was able to understand like about 60–70%, which was also very exciting.
What is the significance of burning incense during like a tea set?
Okay, so regarding the incense,
We talked about this the last time. I don't remember.
Sorry?
I said you may have spoken about this before.
No, I don't recall that actually.
Okay.
For the incense. I am not an expert on incense, first of all, but sometimes we are talking about, the four arts of antiquity in China, which may vary according to context, just to let you know, because some people talk about okay, so how was that? Qin, Qi, Hua, Cha. So it will be, playing instrument, playing, the Chinese chess, being able to draw paintings, Hua, Fa, and the calligraphy. So sometimes the arts are being referred in this respect, but sometimes they are being referred to. Okay, so Xiang, Hua, Fa, Cha, so which would be burning incense, drawing paintings, doing calligraphy, and performing tea art. So it depends. I mean, you can see it either one way or another. So first of all, they will be connected into the context of each one being a separate form of art, but every one of those four arts contributes into building a refined character. So there is this notion that you can become an achieved individuality, an achieved person, by mastering every one of these arts separately, and all together. Because each art has a different kind of contribution into raising and elevating your moral, your aesthetic, judgment, and your integrity as a person. Otherwise, there is, in a more concrete way, usually incense is being burnt as an accompanying, art to the tea ceremony. So, practically speaking, in antiquity, this has been done in order to get rid of, bad smells or, strange and untypical kinds of odors, because, it might be just a matter of hygiene. It might be a matter of, circumstances, but, in ancient China, you can presume that the absence of, flowing water and, so the things we enjoy today, at our homes, like toilets and tap water and everything, were not present there. So, people in their daily lives, when they were drinking tea, it might so happen that they have some, source of strange smells nearby, not to say, worse things. And in order to purify the air, in order to get rid of those bad smells, they would light incense. They will burn incense in order to clear, the atmosphere where they're having tea. It might also be that sometimes incense is being burned as a religious, act, because tea has also been served, made and served during religious ceremonies. So the act of burning incense might be, a religious kind of act accompanying the, the preparation of tea. So these are the contexts that I can think about, in terms of burning essence as an art that is being performed together with the tea preparation. There might be others though, so if anyone knows anything about the burning of incense, welcome to share.
I just see that lots of people who have a tea shop or incense shop, they also sell, those who sell incense, they also sell tea, and those who sell tea, they often sell incense. Aesthetically, it seems only logical, but to me personally, incense burning during the tea ceremony always been like a distraction, because it has this strong, smells, strong aura, and it basically distracts me from the smell of tea. So I personally not a big fan of it. But when I do tea ceremonies at home and somewhere, I make like tea presentations. I sometimes burn incense ahead of time, not during the tea ceremony itself, but maybe like half an hour before. So it just has, this like a faint atmosphere, but not a strong one.
I can't even imagine doing that, because I want to be able to have those different experiences of smelling the gaiwan lid, smelling the tea when it's first started steaming before I add the water. I even have been distracted by the smell of hand soap, and I'm like, oh wow, this tea smells like coconut. Oh no, that's right, I washed my hands before the session. So I like to try to keep things as simple as possible, so that I can pick up on all those subtle different changes that are happening with each steep. The idea of incense just seems just absurd to me. I mean, doing it.
To me the same, yes. And I always tell people, who come, I always tell participants, I always warn them, don't put like strong perfume, or don't even, have any like strong smells on you. And I hate when people come smoking before they go to the tea ceremony, then everybody, at least to me, everything smells like those cigarette butts, and it's terrible. And incense, even though like on its own, it's a nice smell and everything, but it's just distracting from the smell of tea. And to me, the smell, actually, the fragrance was what got me into tea in the first place. Because when my friend, the tea master who actually taught me like about tea, the first time she brewed tea for me, and I smelled the gaiwan and I smelled the tea, I was so like mind blown by it. I didn't expect tea to smell so nice, and this is what got me curious and got
Yeah. For me, the smells it's like traveling and time traveling. Sometimes when I'm having like an old poo, I suddenly imagine that I'm 800 years in the past, and I'm sitting with a group of peasants around a fire, and it's just it can be so transportive. That's my favorite part of tea. I think it's sometimes even more important than the taste. I can handle some bitterness and some astringency if on the other end I'm smelling something interesting from that gaiwan lid or from those leaves directly.
Totally. And lately, what another aspect that got because it's always transforming, like one year it's one thing, then gradually it's turning into something else. Lately, what's been really important for me is the aftertaste, the finish of tea, the taste that it leaves, like a few minutes after I drink it. I started noticing it more and more and more, and now it's becoming almost like a centerpiece in my tea experience, in my personal tea experience.
I'm finding that to be true with Japanese teas, which I'm just starting to explore. That aftertaste of umami, and how, especially with like a really nice Gyokuru, I think they're called. I can kind of carry that on my palette for half an hour after my session, and makes me feel kind of groovy.
And Trent actually mentioned that incense are playing a big part in Japanese tea ceremony. So
Yeah.
But there in Japanese, the thing about Japanese tea ceremony, we're talking about matcha tea ceremony. It's very centered about the overall experience and aesthetics, not as much on taste as Chinese tea ceremony. So it's like a whole different experience altogether. It's very, how do you say it? It's very formalized, and aesthetics play like a huge part, and everything is very ceremonialized. Like every aspect has to be exactly to the point.
I'm hopefully going to be spending some time with some Zen Buddhists soon, who I know incorporate tea very much into their practice, and I can't wait to see the languor of the way they move their hands and pouring the tea with such intention. That to me is just one of the more beautiful things about drinking tea.
I even read somewhere, I'm not sure if I got it to the point, but I read sometime that during Japanese ceremony, even what kind of questions you can ask and what kind of answers you can get, even that is like very formalized in Japanese ceremony. So it's quite
I love
interesting.
ritual. I want to stay out of religion and not go into any houses of worship, but I love ritual, and it's given me doing Gong Fu Cha especially, it's given me that spirituality back into my life the last 5 years or so, that I'm very grateful for that ritualization that I've created for myself.
All right. Cheers to tea, guys. Cheers.
Cheers.
And hey Paul. Whose boy is that?
That's this.
Cutie. What's his name?
That's Daisy.
Hey Daisy, how you doing? She's so quiet and she's so still.
She's my
Very
tea.
chill.
She watches me have morning tea, and I put my finger in my cup and I offer her a drop, and she's always quite willing to give it a go. Very
my
daring.
dog behind the slips right there is
Yeah,
very
beautiful.
different. I let him smell my gaiwan, like teapot or my cup, and he always does like. No, he's not a big fan.
Nisha, when I saw your dog, I said it must be time to go.
No, he's okay.
Okay.
He's chill. No, yeah, but we have to finish this session anyway. So, guys, thank you so much, everyone, for being present.
It was
And
nice
we'll
meeting you
see
all.
you. Yeah, likewise. And we'll see you in a month. And we'll have a nice new session next time.
Thank
Cheers,
you.
guys. Thank you.